Great panel today. Starting from my left, we have Ilkka Paananen. Ilkka Paananen is the CEO and founder of Supercell, the makers of next generation online games. Previously to Supercell, Ilkka co-founded Sumea, which became part of Digital Chocolate and is one of the biggest companies in the mobile casual space. Next to him, we have Matias Myllyrinne from Remedy, the CEO of Remedy Entertainment, who obviously all of you Finns know here from Max Payne, Alan Wake, and their latest and greatest called Death Rally. We have Sampo Karjalainen, who is the co-founder of Sulake, the makers of Habbo Hotel, one of the very first pioneers of virtual item sales in the Western markets, true pioneer in the virtual worlds, an innovator and a multi-talented person. And of course, who doesn't know Mikael yet? If anybody needs an intro, it's definitely not Mikael with a half a million downloads behind Angry Birds. So, what do you think? Do we have a good panel today? Thank you. I need more of that applause because we need to get these guys juiced and talking because they just told me they won't say anything. But let's see, we'll try. So our panel today is about what will happen in gaming in the next 5 years. But that's only looking forward. We need to also look backwards in time to understand where we are and how rapid the change has been. So I want to open up the panel with the question, what is the biggest thing that surprised you in the last 5 years? Not the 5 coming, but the last 5 years. What's been most transformative? And maybe if we talk with Mikael, maybe you've obviously seen a huge change in Rovio in the last 5 years.
Right. So when we started Rovio in 2003 and 2004, we were already then hearing lots or seeing lots of reports from analysts saying that okay, smartphones are coming and content for smartphones will be really important, and somehow that just the kind of hockey stick type of growth of that content market never really took off until the iPhone came along. And that truly, I believe that first we saw, of course, the shifting towards the digital distribution of games and so forth, but really the iPhone was revolutionary, not only in the mobile games industry, but that has kind of like impacted all of the rest of gaming as well. So that's been the biggest change.
Absolutely. iPhone really changed markets. What about you, Sampo?
Yeah, back when we started over 10 years ago, it's kind of fun because Habbo was one of the very first kind of true browser-based social game back then with virtual economy and micropayments. So in some sense, we were very early in some areas. And we got to kind of work alone for a long time developing Habbo. And during the past 5 years, there's been a lot of changes, like you mentioned. And it's been kind of a bit challenging for us to see which parts really fit into the Habbo picture and which parts don't. For example, the social graph has been a bit of a challenging thing because Habbo is more about finding new friends and meeting new people and having fun with them. So in that sense, how to use your existing social graph in a kind of way that fits that picture has been a bit of a challenge. Regarding mobile, of course, iPhone and all these things have been wonderful changes, but we started back in 2001 with the first mobile experiments. And even there, it's been kind of not very easy to translate the Habbo core experience to mobile phones, but we've done games and we are doing things in that area as well.
So definitely Facebook has been another transformative factor. What about you, Matias? You were real 2000. When did Max Payne 2 launch? 2004?
2003.
2003. So an Alan Wake now a year and a half ago. There's a lot of shifts to console paradigms. I mean, what has really impacted your business most?
You know, I think on a broader scope, my feeling is that our audience has actually diversified and grown a lot. And if we look a few years back, so different age groups, different genders are playing. So increasingly, the average age is 34, 40% of gamers are women, and women above 30 are a larger gaming segment than men below 20. So kind of the stereotypical gamer, which is, you know, a 20-something in a college dorm room, is no longer the norm. And I think that's impacted the entire industry. Maybe not particularly for the kinds of games that we make, but I think it's certainly brought a lot of new angles into the ecosystem and keeps it healthy.
Absolutely, that's a huge point. Gaming is for everybody, and the last 5 years have really shown that it's not just the nerds, it's everybody. What about you, Ilkka?
Well, I'd like to extend on what Matias just said. So,
We seem to have a microphone malfunction.
right, so I wanted to extend on what Matias just said. So the most surprising thing for me is that, I mean, you basically described how there's like now, it's not just the 20-year-old male who plays games, everybody plays these games these days. And I think what has really driven this kind of transformation is the rise of the social networks and these kind of casual platforms like the iPhone. So I mean, and the kind of the speed at which this has happened, I think has been really surprising.
Absolutely. I think the one question I have as a long-time gamer, being brought up with games and being immersed with them, I remember games being very hard and punishing and taking hours to finish, and you sit there, your eyes gleaming at the screen. Do they have room for deep experiences still today? Or are we, for example, for these new platforms like mobile and Facebook, are we really bound to more a shallow, casual experience that's more kind of a snack gaming? Is there room for both of the ends, or are we standardizing towards more a casual experience? Who wants to take that?
You know, I mean, I think this is really something that's close to our hearts. I think there's room for different types of gaming. My analogy comes from video. There are people who watch YouTube clips. There are people who watch reality TV shows, and the same person might watch a well-written HBO miniseries or a huge Hollywood spectacle like Avatar. And I think some of our games fall into those categories. Death Rally for us is a pick-up-and-play experience. The average gaming experience is about 3 minutes long, whereas we know for Alan Wake, the gaming experience is about 92 minutes long. And those are very different consumption patterns, and they serve a different kind of need.
So can you provide a deep experience on, say, a tablet?
Time will tell. Not yet.
What about you, Ilkka?
I think you absolutely can deliver a deep experience, and it's also like, so what's deep about the experience actually could be changing. So if first, in the early days, like what was called a deep game, it had like really immersive graphics and kind of a hard to learn gameplay. But these days, if you look at these games, say, for example, on Facebook, you have games like, say, Backyard Monsters. This I think is a extremely casual game, but still, I mean, at least the word out there is that that kind of game has extremely hardcore players. I mean, people who we would all call casual gamers, but the way they play that game is a very hardcore. And they spend a lot of time and also money on that game, and I think we are seeing kind of the same kind of patterns in the Gunshine, even though we were still in beta for the last few months. But still, it's amazing how much time and money people are willing to spend on these type of games. And I think the deepness comes from the richness of a social interaction. It just comes from a different factors than it used to come from.
Is this a false claim, actually? Because isn't Angry Birds deep? If I'm pouring my hours into that, isn't that deep? Or isn't Habbo extremely deep with its social interactions? So is there a kind of a misconflict that doesn't really exist? We just have different types of definitions of deep. Yeah. For me, deep may be sitting down from a TV, but for consumers of Habbo or Angry Birds, the deepness comes from returning and inputting hours and hours into it, and mastery will still be deep.
Yeah, I fully agree. There are different types of deep, and Habbo is able to provide a kind of social deep experience, and some of the casual games, they provide a different type of everyday relief every now and then. So it depends how you define deep. But I think the nature of social networks gaming and mobile gaming, the context is kind of more, it's shorter sessions every now and then. So in that sense, it means that I don't think we are going to see the old type of deep games on these platforms being very popular. Yeah. But there may be a small niche for that type of stuff too.
Well, it has to be pretty deep gameplay for you to start cosplaying, and we've already seen cosplaying with Angry Birds at the White House, so who's to claim that that's not deep? Well, I think, how many of you like your games free? Do you want to pay for your games, or do you want them free? Okay, so they want their games free. Is free the default price of the future?
I think for a very large part it will be, and especially on these platforms. I think the Facebook gaming audience, as well as very large part of the iOS and Android gaming audience, has been trained on the fact that the game should be free to play. I mean, there are of course some notable exceptions, but for a very large part, the games are free. And I think it's a kind of a trend that will be very difficult to stop.
So, Mikael, I'm going to ask you a controversial question. Would you rather have a top 1 spot or a 99-cent app? If you have to choose either or, I'm not telling Rich, but I'm putting a gun to your head. 99 cents or top 1 spot, which one?
Sorry, 99 cents.
So in the iOS charts, if you have to choose between making Angry Birds free or dropping down from the top 1 spot, which one would you choose? I guess it's a trick question because you don't have to.
Yeah, it's a very tough question because our approach is always like, okay, let's be everywhere and we'll serve every model that there is, and essentially we're not ruling anything out, and doing it very profitably on every stage. So faced with that choice, right now I would say still the paid downloads are very interesting as long as you are number 1. As soon as you are number 11 or lower, then really doing a good free-to-play starts to become very, very interesting.
I think you exemplify the fact that a game brand can be transmedia. It can really go outside of gaming and become a media brand. And I think Rovio will become the next Disney. What do you think? Is Rovio the next Disney? Yeah, well, I think a few people agree. I think you probably agree. So I think there the power is in the character. And it's really, and the monetization may happen anywhere. And I think that's the promise of free, is you create something that you don't need to monetize immediately up front, but you can monetize elsewhere because you build your billion fans.
Yeah.
And I think that's your ultimate goal, 1 billion fans.
Exactly. Well, that's precisely what we're doing. And this all ties into your previous question also about the depth of gameplay, whether there is room for kind of traditionally very hardcore games. And what we're seeing really is kind of a widening of the audience with the proliferation of these kind of portable entertainment devices like iPhones and iPads out there. We're seeing that we can reach a much, much wider audience than ever before, like both in age and in gender. And so that also means that people, when you do that, it's easier to approach new audiences when your price point is essentially 0.
Absolutely. So I think the key takeaway from here is that what matters is a great game experience. And if you build an awesome game, you have abilities to monetize it within the game or outside the game. And I think Remedy's worked a lot on this, on building character-driven IPs that transcended and gone all the way to the movies. Is Remedy, like Rovio, are you an IP-driven house primarily? Is that what your core competence is?
I think it's always been about IP. It's always been about creating, for us, it's been cinematic, character-driven entertainment. What that means on different platforms is a different thing. So I think you need to make these for the medium that you're playing in. It goes to the consumption patterns of how long people play and so forth. But it's very much about building IP. I think IP is where you build value. If you build generic names, things that people don't relate to, or you can't move from medium to medium, can't build sequels, spin-offs, you're basically wasting a lot of potential. You just have an uphill battle.
So Mike Capps, the president of Epic Games, who is one of the makers of Gears of War, Unreal, and the very popular Unreal Engine, has his manifesto for next generation consoles. And he calls for microtransactions for consoles for faster iteration times. I think all of you probably agree that one thing that the new platforms gave to us is a faster iteration time, less gatekeepers, and a more direct access to consumers. Is that something that could revitalize console business? We saw a little bit of drain going down. Do you think opening up more direct consumer relationship, more control over pricing, and a faster iteration time could lead to better games on console?
I think that's, to a degree, that's happening, and the open markets or more open markets and ecosystems are proving their worth in a way, and I think some of those elements will work their way into traditional console ecosystems. But on the other hand, I think we need to respect the device, and I don't know what the right degree of openness is. I think it's more open than they are now, but on the other hand, a living room experience might be slightly different from do you want an Android marketplace living on your TV? I'm not sure I'd want that.
Yeah.
So maybe a more curated version of free, if that makes any sense.
So I think to summarize some of that, you have different expectations at different devices. You go to mobile, you expect a certain kind of deep. You go to a console, you expect very immersive, certain kind of deep, and you're willing to pay up front for that. But I think some of the trends that are really driving here are trends that have been championed by Facebook and mobile game developers. And I think that's a good segue to understanding that Rovio is really on top of the mobile movement. Maybe, Mikael, can you share any tips on how do I get my mobile game going? What's the magic sauce of succeeding in across 200,000 applications?
Well, that was really by far the biggest challenge we had when we started making Angry Birds. And of course, we had released some games before Angry Birds as well. In fact, we published 15 of our own titles and done a number of other projects before. But we had a couple of iPhone experiments that we tried with, and we learned that not only do you have to have kind of a perfect offering to start with when you hit the market, because you only get that one chance really to get the good reviews and to get kind of people to recommend your app to each other, and that's really one big thing. But the other thing was, how do you get anybody at all, to see your app when you launch it, so. Really, and that still remains a huge challenge. I think still the only really effective way, kind of like any kind of guarantee that anybody will see it, is if you get featured by Apple. All other kinds of marketing are well, I haven't seen any other kind of way of acquiring customers that would actually cost you less than what it costs them to get that customer through advertising, for instance. And even the Apple feature is no guarantee by any means. So I would say that's the hardest nut to crack, and there is no one good answer to it.
So Apple definitely values quality. Whole game experiences that really grab you with in the visuals, in their gameplay that are innovative, and Angry Birds really hit a lot of these notes. What would you say to an aspiring game developer on how he should make his game to be palatable to Apple, saying like, wow, this is awesome, we really want to feature this, would you please send us some artwork? So what do you think really like ticks Apple's boxes, if you will, to make them notice you?
Apple, their approach to all of their products is that they want to see very high quality products with a great user interface, and like very intuitive to use products, and of course if you can do that, have a very polished experience, but also at the same time, if you want to maximize your chances of getting an Apple feature, of course you'll try and highlight something that you can do great with your phone or your iPad or whatever. That also, of course, if you can help promote Apple, then that's always good.
So here we have a relatively gated platform where the users go to one place and getting featured there really drives your success. Ilkka, you're working on a much broader scale. You have the web. There's of course Google, but who goes to Google and writes, I want a cool game? Well, some people do, but it's not a curated place where you really go get featured. What do you think are the success factors in your type of business? How do you find your audience?
Well, I think it's a combination of factors. So obviously everything that Mikael just said, I mean, it's obviously a factor. But on top of that, there's something that I would call kind of a social discovery. So lots of the users, how they discover the games are via their friends, and obviously everything that you can do with the Facebook APIs helps you a lot. And by the way, I think that'll come. It's not really there yet on the iOS and the Android platforms, but I'm pretty sure that it's coming. So make sure that you sort of build into your products like reasons for the users to play with their friends. And our approach actually has been quite different from that of, say, Zynga's. I mean, I think I talked a little bit about this earlier today, but a lot of the kind of the early social games have been driven by games which are essentially single-player games, which are just trying to think up excuses for you to kind of invite your friends into the game. We took a little bit different approach. So we started to design our game from a ground up, like thinking about like, so what makes this game a social game, and why would this game be better to be played with friends? And then we kind of like trust that, I mean, by creating such kind of natural incentives, we actually can get the game to spread virally.
So, Sampo, when you started, there was no Facebook. The whole concept of Facebook was very foreign. There were some things about MySpace happening, but you are a social product. Habbo was is a social product at its core. Was the driving engine of your user acquisition tactic the fact that people invited friends after seeing it was cool?
Yeah, over the years, like from the very beginning, it's been people telling their friends in real life and inviting their friends and maybe even showing them for the first time how to use it and helping them to get started. And so the viral element was there even without Facebook. And of course afterwards we have started to use all kinds of user acquisition methods, and we use Facebook as a kind of distribution method. Yeah.
Matias, you had awesome success with Death Rally, which was your first game actually in 1995?
96.
96, so you know, we were one of the very first companies in Finland that went to professional game development after Housemarque. And Death Rally, I still remember when one of your founders, Marcus, told me that we have 100,000 downloads on Happy Puppy. I don't know, points for anybody who remembers Happy Puppy, but it was a download site back in those days. How did you revitalize to bring the old game to people on iOS who probably never heard of the game? How did you get to millions and millions of users?
I think, you know, we strove first off, you know, to make a good game, and obviously a big part of that, the heavy lifting was done by the developers at Mountain Sheep and Corn Fox. And we helped to produce that, to make it a slick experience, bring in some design elements, quality bars from our own side, from larger games. And then we worked hard with Apple. We spoke to Apple and talked about the iPad 2 coming out and making sure that we take some of those features into account. And in that way, a platform holder is always a platform holder. Whether they're Sony, Microsoft, or Apple, they want something to use their latest and greatest hardware and to bring out the features that are wonderful and unique about this. And if you can do that, then you're in a good spot. And we were featured by Apple. And at its peak, we had, I think, 2.7 million players daily on Death Rally. And like I said in my speech, it recouped in 3 days. So it was, you know, I've been to business school. It was a good business move. And we'll do more of that. But I think we're developing, we're learning. And that's the wonderful part about this. Things are changing so rapidly that you know, you can't rely on your old tricks. It's learning new stuff.
So we've talked a little bit about two giants on the business, Facebook and Apple. And of course, there's still Google. And interestingly, Facebook now has 350 million mobile users. And Brett Taylor, Facebook's CTO, just recently said that we are going to be a mobile company. Most of our resources will be on mobile, so taking this challenge very seriously. What is your take on Facebook's impact on the gaming ecosystems on mobile? There hasn't really been almost any so far. None of the games are really Facebook integrated yet. It's very early days. But there's a huge amount of gaming, and we know that Facebook had a big impact on creating a new sector of gaming. What will Facebook do? How will this shake up? Who dares to answer that without incurring the wrath of Apple? Maybe Sampo.
Yeah, well, of course there may be some value in developing HTML5 games that work on Facebook, on the mobile phones. It's a new distribution method for mobile phones, but I think it will hinge very much on the user experience, how you get to bookmark the games, how quick is it to get to the game and out of it. All those things will play a kind of big role in whether or not it picks up.
So HTML5 is one of the technologies that allows Facebook to have free reign on mobile because it's all mobile web. It's not controlled by Apple or Google. But what's interestingly happened with Facebook's launch was that they also launched discovery for native applications. And if I go to Facebook, a lot of things I do, I click on YouTube videos, I click on stuff my friends share. Maybe they're entertainment, maybe they're news stories. And we talked about how hard it is to find ways to get users, featured being one. But could social discovery be another way of growing on mobile in the future? What do you think, Ilkka?
Absolutely, I think it most definitely will be. It's probably going to take a little bit of time for those technologies to mature to the point that they are currently on your Facebook web browser. But I mean, it would be very hard to imagine that that would not happen. I don't think it's a question of like whether it will happen or not. It's just a question of when.
So we've talked about a little bit of trends, and these trends were picked by me and imposed on you. So it's time to cut the crap, Jussi's visions of future. The real meat of this presentation was what do you think is happening in 5 years? So why don't we give each one of you individually a little bit time to play the oracle. Maybe Larry Ellison, channeling a little bit Larry Ellison, some bullish talk. And let's see, let's go in chronological order from Mikael. What do you think is going to fundamentally change in 5 years that's really going to change the face of gaming? I'm sorry, it's just a moment. It seems that we have a microphone problem again.
Thanks. So what we're seeing already is that there has been a dramatically fast transition towards portable entertainment and a widening of the audience, kind of shift more towards casual gaming, but also social gaming. I don't see any reason why that would stop. I also don't see any reason why actually the demand for hardcore games would cease to exist. People still want to play those games. So rather I just see that the entire industry, game industry, is getting much bigger, and the time that people spend with game entertainment as opposed to, for instance, television is going to be much bigger. So that's certainly a major trend. Then as to what technologies will be the biggest in the future, well, that we'll see. I think very important for all game developers is to have an ability to support as many game platforms as possible. And if you're not locking yourself down onto and betting your whole future on one given platform. I mean, the iOS, for instance, is quite big right now, but as you say, Facebook is coming on mobile. Nobody knows whether that will take over or not, and who knows? Android is getting huge, and maybe we'll have like Windows Phone will be like the biggest thing tomorrow, very likely scenario, so the kind of type of game that is being played is changing. I think social gaming also is still just very early in its development. We'll see a lot better implementations of kind of social gaming mechanics in the future. I don't think there have been actually any really good and kind of deeply immersive gaming experiences on the social side yet. It's rather kind of like a repetition of the same game mechanics and kind of like milking the money out of the users. So I think we'll see a lot better games there. So industry is getting bigger, more platforms you need to support, and you just need to be very adaptive, I would say.
So explosive growth, the next couple of billion players, and it's going to be a proliferation of technologies. Definitely. Sampo, what about you?
Okay, I'd like to see games expanding to new areas, like a completely new type of experiences that have gaming elements. Kind of the gamification trend, but not just points and badges and leaderboards, more like creating more playful and more gameful.
More like wild chords just now on the stage, learning to play the guitar with just a game.
Yeah. So kind of wishing that the game industry gets to expand to completely new areas by kind of innovating and coming up with new types of concepts, so that even like everyday activities can turn into games. On the technology side, I think there is some promise in the cloud gaming stuff, like streaming games. It may not happen in 5 years, like in full scope, but especially for tablets at home, the screen, that might be interesting from technological point of view. What are the platforms and technological solutions to build the new ecosystems for that type of games? And on a business side, I think there will be like continuous disruption going on. Like all the times new players are challenging the old ones, which will drive the price to zero, but we will be moving the price sticker to new places and finding the new places where people are willing to pay for them. So something like that.
What about you, Matias?
I think we're going to see various different business models. We're going to see some of the models now on Facebook. I think Facebook is ahead of a lot of the other platforms. We're going to see those transcend into different realms, but increasingly we are going to have games that are still sold digitally or even in retail for some people in the way the consumers want it. And that's really, we're going to provide the content and the entertainment that the audience wants. The audience is going to grow, and I think it's going to be a healthy place to be at. But I think service elements will be a part of any game experience. So they will be an ongoing. So I think the time of here's a single player disc, have a nice life is past already, and we've probably crossed that pole. But we'll continue to update it with downloadable content. You can interact with it in different forms, and the franchises will live on. So I think it's a happy place. And one trend that I'm just seeing from my own family is how young the kids are getting into games. Thanks to Mikael and Peter and those guys, it's like, our 3-year-old can actually start up a gaming device, load the level he wants, and play it. And we started playing when we were young, on the two Amigas and early PCs. But they're 3-year-olds, and that's, I think, is going to be a wonderful change. In 5 years' time, those 8-year-olds are going to have a demand for different kinds of gameplay, more depth, and it's going to be really interesting to see how that develops. And I think it's a positive thing.
I'm sure if you polled a lot of parents, they would just say to Mikael, thank you for saving my life at the doctor's appointment, at the airport, at the waiting line, at the supermarket, wherever I have my tablet with me and my kids. What about you, Ilkka? What do you think disruption is happening in 5 years?
Well, I'm personally a huge believer in sort of the accessibility. So I think the mass market gaming successes will mostly be driven by games that are accessible, and by that I mean that the games will be free to play and they are available on these kind of mass market devices that people can access them on, so smartphones, tablets, web browser, etc. And then I'm a big believer in social, just as a fundamental factor driving up the consumptions for games. And I actually think that the Facebook, in a sense, will become the biggest platform for games ever.
So if I pull these strings together, all of you believe on pretty explosive growth for gaming across all age demographics, across different type of gaming experiences. So there's a huge amount of opportunity. This is an absolutely growing market. It's not going to go away. We all need entertainment in our lives. Once we get past the hunger, once we get the basic primitive needs, we want to play. We want to be entertainment. We are homo ludus, we are the playful human. Now, but if we get concrete, and I'm coming here with my hat in hand, please guys, invest to my business. Like, where would you tell me to put, where would you put your money in if I were pitching your business idea? Or where would you instruct somebody to go and put their own money in? Because obviously these are the lofty goals. But if you look at just now, today, let's be very specific. Maybe 1 or 2 things, everybody. It's just a quick fire. I want your money, or I have a little bit of money, and I want to invest, and I want to create a meaningful company, something that's big, not just a cottage industry, but a meaningful company. And let's start this time with Matias.
So I'll answer you by what I would not do, and this might be slightly surprising from us, but I think the last place to start as a new company is to go into the AAA console space. The barriers to entry are huge. It's the equivalent of saying that you want to direct the next Titanic or Avatar. Don't go there. It's a dead end. It's just too hard to start from scratch. I love where we're at, but if I was starting today, I would not start there. Yeah. For me, I'm loving the iPhone business. We'll see kind of where that goes. I think HTML5 will have a lot of potential. It just hedges your bets in many ways. So I don't know. Those are my early thoughts. But I'm liking the whole snack bar from the nachos to the big main course. So I'm happy in both areas.
Okay. So Ilkka, give me money to my business. Where should you put your money in? Like, I want to run a big, meaningful company in the future, and I want some seed money from you.
Well, I would personally, look at games which work really well as services. So something, and also, this is a lot of buzzwords, but cross-platform services. I think we haven't really seen like all that many of those yet. And I would also, I mean, as everybody has been saying, because these days everybody plays and everybody has an access to a gaming device of some sort. So, and what that means, I think, is that there's still a lot of underserved segments out there. So pick a segment that is underserved and build your game as a service.
What about you, Mikael? Where would you instruct me to put my 100,000 euros in when I want to do a meaningful game company?
I think there are many ways actually in gaming right now that you can make money. For me, the most interesting part really is how we see a trend where games really, as I said before, kind of like an all portable entertainment is starting to take over from TV time, because TV has been such a dominant thing for people's free time. And now we see that games is the biggest one, biggest chunk of time that people are then spending on these devices. For me, the most interesting is how our games and the most important games are becoming a channel, kind of like replacing the TV channel. And therefore, the issue becomes creating some amazing content for that. And still, it will be a very, very hard competition for those eyeballs still. It's like iOS right now, it's hyper competitive. I don't know any other business that is as competitive as that is. So, in fact, if you just look at statistics, I would not advise anybody to invest in iPhone games. Just saying that, well, most likely you'll lose your money. But if you combine that money with some great talent and some smart thinking, you can find a way. And every day, the kind of the target is moving. You can't say that if something is great today, in 3 months' time, the great money-making opportunity may be somewhere completely different. So I would invest in people who are smart, can do very great games and polished gaming experiences, but also are very adaptable to whatever happens in the future.
So Sampo,
Yeah, well,
any area that you think we should invest?
Yeah, I guess I would believe in expanding the game business in general, like trying to find very smart concepts where everyday life gets really changed by games. Something that fits into people's everyday culture, everyday life, that type of practical apps. But on technology level, on platform level, I think some type of disruptive, really cheap, crappy platform things that look really cheap right now, but have the potential of really surprising everyone. It can happen on mobiles. Yeah. Let's say like streaming thing that you tap one icon on your iPhone and then there are like tens of games that you can play immediately. They don't have to be as good as the best iPhone games right now, but something like that can be a big thing.
So we have only 5 minutes left. I have plenty of questions, but I think it's time for the audience to speak their mind and ask. So we have a microphone somewhere here, and please raise your hand if you want to ask the panel a question. First one is there, so can we have the microphone?
Hello. My question is, Sampo, based on what you were saying, I just remembered that the other day I read a news article that University of Washington scientists were not able to solve this protein structure for such a long time, but then they made it as a game, fold it or something, and then these gamers solved how the protein structure is. So I was wondering, were you thinking along those lines when you said something?
I'm sorry.
So the question was about using gamification to do protein folding for medicine. There was this a game around folding proteins to form medicine. So and the question was about that, on how important that is, this type of gaming.
Well, the scientists were not able to identify the protein structure initially, but then they made it as a game.
Yes.
It's called Fold It, and then the gamers solved the protein structure.
Yes, and what your question is?
My question was that something similar to what you were saying?
Yeah, I'm familiar with this project where they are encouraging gamers to help finding the combinations of proteins, and I think that type of, it's a very practical kind of for a good thing that how to get gamers help solve these medical health issues, and I think that type of projects are really interesting. I think it doesn't always have to be that serious, though. It can be something that just enlivens our lives, makes our social connections more interesting. Our everyday activities of going work can be fun and like very everyday stuff.
Great.
Yeah.
Do we have other questions? Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question from the panel. If there are no questions, I'm going to ask one. So, in very brief words, 10 words or less, what is your advice to want-to-be game entrepreneurs who want to be sitting here in 5 years' time? You've all had battle scars. You all had ups and downs. What advice would you give to people who want to be game entrepreneurs? Let's start with you.
Build a great team.
Build a great team.
Think positive, positive happens.
Think positive, positive happens. Sampo.
Think of new things, go brave new directions.
Think of new things. Mikael.
Believe in your thing and keep at it. It took us 52 times, so just keep working on it.
Awesome. Please give a very warm hand for our marvelous panel. Thank you, guys.